I see that you have brought some items with you today.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to share with us what those items are?
Certainly. I brought some props. Now, I thought I had...
It's story time with Mr. Rob.
I thought I had the Quran with me. And in fact, I kind of have two Qurans with me. It turns out they're not the official Quran. The Quran in Islam, if the Quran is translated out of classical Arabic, not even just modern Arabic, but ancient Arabic, it's no longer the Quran. Only if it's in Arabic is it the Quran. So I have, in a sense, two Qurans with me. Both of them have both Arabic and English. So that's why it may not be an official Quran, even though the Arabic part is Arabic, or is the Quran. But because it has English in it, it may not pass muster for their understanding. Any translation of the Quran in Islam is considered to be a commentary. Like in growing up at Bible schools or Sunday school or with my parents on their bookshelves, they'd have commentaries, like famous Christian scholars or writers or teachers that would kind of study scripture and help us understand it. That's kind of what I understand the meaning to be for commentary. I think that's in Islam, that's similarly, but they're saying the act of translation changes it, so it's no longer the Quran. One of the some of what that's based on, I think it's in the Quran as well, but it's certainly in their tradition, is that the Quran is holy, different than we think of the Bible as holy. It's holy because it exists forever and perfectly in heaven. And so what the recitation of, so when the angel Gabriel spoke to the Prophet Muhammad, he was reciting this text that existed before all time to us. So when Muhammad put it into Arabic, into classic Arabic, that was the official version of the translation of what's always in heaven to what was in his hands. So anything that's not that is just further and further away from the truth. And so only the Arabic is, only the classic Arabic is the Quran. That's different from Christian understanding, because in fact there's a large effort for a long time to translate Scripture into every language on the planet, and I think that's a wonderful thing. There's Scripture also in the Bible that talks about that really affirms that we don't all have to be the same culture or the same language. But just celebrates that God has delights in the diversity that He's created in this world and the creativity, and that not only is it good and beautiful, but also it's helpful to each of us that we are diverse like that. And I've seen that in stories from missionaries and in my own life, that our brothers and sisters who are followers of God from around the world, the way that we understand it is kind of melded in with who we are and where we come from and how we live. So when I understand, or when God's kind of teaching me, or I learn something about how our life with the living God is, someone from the other side of the world that may grow up or live a little differently, they understand in a different way. But when we come together and we talk about it, we both kind of understand and love God a little more. So when all these people from all around the world do it, we not only build ourselves up and encourage each other, but we also savor and understand and love God more. And so I think that's in Scripture, that's in Christian tradition, and that's something that I think is wonderful and delightful. It may exist to some extent in Islam, but formally it must be Arabic. And I think practically it privileges Arab custom and culture. So this Quran here is it's just the Quran, and it's in Arabic, isn't it? Yeah. So it's in Arabic. Arabic reads from right to left, and for us, from the back of the book to the front of the book. So it's kind of backwards for us. So they would read like this. They turn the page like this. And there's the Quran. And there's a listing of all the verses, and that's in Arabic. And so, but this is a translation. So as it has Arabic on one side, it has the English translation. I'm not sure what this is over here. Maybe it's some traditions on this side. But so that's why this one may not be an official Quran, just because it has more than just classical Arabic in it. So this is a copy of the Quran, because I know a little bit of Arabic. I can read a little bit, but I'm really English is what I'm familiar with. So if I want to understand something, I've either got to practice a whole lot more, which I'm going to, or read it in English. So for me, this is helpful so I can understand. Now, this is similar. It's an Arabic and English reference Quran. So this is actually printed in the kind of in our traditional way, which is even though it has Arabic text on the top, it's got English print, and it reads from the front to the back and from the left to the right, the way we're used to reading our books. So as we kind of go in here, it also has Arabic and the English translation, but the way our books go is they go from, we read it in our the way that's familiar to us, from the front of the book to the back of the book, or left to right. This book I appreciate because it a lot of the Quran talks about history and teachings of God that are also talked about in our scriptures, in the Old Testament or the New Testament. So this is a reference Quran, Arabic English reference Quran that not only translates the language, but also helps cite some of the things the Quran talks about. What scholars think, all right, this corresponds to this, different parts of what it talks about in Scripture. So it's helpful to, as I'm reading the Quran, to see it in context with what what Scripture says about it. And that's important to me because I have learned to trust in Scripture. I've learned to trust and know and love the God who Scripture is about, and whose Spirit speaks through it, and who has preserved it for us. I don't have that same relationship with the Quran. In fact, I don't think the Quran is true. I think the Quran is, it has some problems with it, but if I want to understand people, there's no harm in understanding it. So that's kind of the deal with this book. And then this book is the Bible translated into Arabic.
That's cool.
But it also has English on it. And so, because apparently I really like English. And so, but this in Arabic style is, the book itself goes from what to us is the back of the book to the front. So it goes reverse direction from the Old Testament all the way through to the New Testament. This is all of our scripture translated into Arabic. So these appeal to me as I become friends with my Muslim neighbors and people in the community.
Yeah.
I want to be able to have conversations and look into their Quran with them and be able to share that type of looking into the Bible with them as well, in a way that might be familiar with them.
Absolutely. So in the Quran, like, are there separate books of the Bible, kind of like how we have books? Like, is it like Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, or is it like set up by chapters?
I think they're called surahs, and I don't remember what the word translates, what it means in English. When we were talking about kind of the history of the Quran, the Prophet Muhammad would be in a cave, and the angel Gabriel would recite to him, would tell him, basically, or read to him the Quran, the copy of the heavenly Quran. And it's called the Quran, which is Arabic for recitation, because Angel Gabriel instructed him to memorize it and repeat it back to him. So all of these things that Islam also from the beginning, from Muhammad, was oral. He received it, and it's believed that he then faithfully repeated it, and sometimes miraculously repeated it without error to his followers. What was the question? I think I got lost.
Is the Quran set up of books of the Quran, kind of like books of the Bible? Like, is there like a Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, or is it just this, or is it just like one big long story type of thing?
The Quran, the copies of the Quran that I have, and throughout history in Islam, there may have been different compilations of it. It has the same contents, as far as I understand. What seem to us to be the chapters of the Quran, those same chapters are haven't been added to and haven't been taken away, but they are the order that those chapters are presented in. And when they're bound into a book, those may have changed throughout history. The copies that I have are all from the shortest surah, or the shortest kind of chapter, in a sense, at the beginning of the book, to the longest surah at the end. There are in some of the teachings of Islam, it's important to his followers to know kind of which teachings came before others, because it's arranged by length of passage and not by when it was written. And so trying to read it just front to back like a story is very hard. It wouldn't make sense that way. Sometimes there's versions of the Bible that are chronological. Like I've heard of that before, where they've taken our Bible and they've rearranged it so that as the events that it's depicted or when it was written, so that you can read it like a story, like we'd read, like, because it's about real things. And so we could read it front to back all the way through, and have see the story arc of what God's telling us in His story, in His scriptures, see that all in order. So even out doing that aren't in like first this, then that, then this, then that kind of order. But in the Quran, it's not that way at all. So